Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we'll have a look at something slightly different today, something we did touch on a week or two ago, and that is what is going on up in the stratosphere. Now this is a staple of our autumnal winter look aheads, as it can have a profound impact on the sort of winter weather that we do see. Now, for much of this winter so far, it's not been anything out of the ordinary, if we're being completely honest. There hasn't been a very strong polar vortex, but there hasn't been a very weak one either. So there's not really been much to talk about. However, a week or two ago, we started to see some models rumbling at the risk of some disruption in the polar vortex as we do head into the end of February and into the early part of March. And I just wanted to update everyone on what is going on with that. Now, at the moment, we're not expecting any imminent major disruption to the polar vortex and any reversal in those zonal winds or major warming event in the next week or so. But it's since the final few days of February into early March, there is quite a strong signal for at least a minor warning up in the stratosphere, maybe quite a moderate warming. Now, at the moment, we're not expecting a major sudden stratospheric warming, one that, historically in like 2018 caused the beasts from the east. We're not expecting anything on that scale, but a minor warming this time in the winter could have pretty profound impacts on March and April. Of course, if we did see a minor warming, we did see zonal mean winds really weaken, then there is the risk of further blocking and potentially recurring colder patterns into the spring. Now, one spring that does spring to mind is the spring of 2021. 2020-2021 winter wasn't that cold really. There was a bit of winteriness in places. We saw some snow, some colder spells, and we did see a pretty cold easterly wind in early February. That easterly wind was pretty cold, and we've not actually seen a colder easterly since, but overall that winter was still above average. It was nothing to write home about. However, we did see some pretty unusual spring-like conditions where in March and April we saw some really cold blasts from the north and northeast. I do remember doing videos with the -10 isotherm coming in for the first day of April, and that was because we did see a late season sudden stratospheric warming. Now, it doesn't mean, as I said, we're going to see something similar this year, but even a minor disruption could have similar impacts. Now, if we do start on the latest GFS operational run, again, don't take this as gospel, it's one run, but it does just show you what the model is thinking at the moment. You see a pretty strong polar vortex at the moment, and actually it's thought that it's going to be very strong over the next few days and the next week in general. However, as we progress into the final 10 days or so of February, we do see quite a large warming appearing over Europe. Now, as we progress into further into the final week of February, we do see the polar vortex and the cold air aloft does start to reduce in intensity, gets quite elongated. Now, of course, as we progress towards spring, it inevitably warms up. It happens every year. It's just the cycle that we see. But this is quite a profound warming. And if we go towards the end of the run, you can see some really large areas of warming in and around the polar vortex. Now, I said, not a major sun stratospheric warming, but definitely a significant enough warming that it could have propagating impacts through the polar vortex. And of course, looking at the temperatures is important, but it's those zonal mean winds that we'll look at in a minute that could definitely give us an indication of what is going on. Now, I do just want to have a look at the ECMWF. These are the weekly mean anomalies. So this is very similar to what we just saw, but these are anomalies from ensemble. So this has got a lot more spread within it. So it does give a better consensus than one individual GFS run. See, at the moment there is warming either side of the pole, but the polar vortex is fairly strong with blues right over the pole. Into the following week, into the final week of February, into early March, do you still see the polar vortex there? Cooler pool, but warmer air starting to appear, and that warmer air starts to dominate early March, and we do see quite a strong positive warm signal there as we do progress throughout much of March. As said, not a sun stratospheric warming. when we see a sudden stratospheric warming, we do see really dark, almost browns on this chart, but some pretty strong reds indicating that yes, well above average air in terms of temperature could be moving into the North Pole and could really disrupt the polar vortex. Now, the best way to view this is looking at those zonal mean winds. Now, this is the same data that we just saw from the ECMWF, but this is on a line chart, and it's looking at the zonal mean winds, the actual strength of the polar vortex, that fast ribbon of air moving around that big cold pool. Now, you see over the next week or so into the final 7 days to 10 days of the month, a very strong polar vortex getting up towards the sort of top 5-10% of what we'd expect. And you can see that this is very strong for the time of year. But look what happens to early March. Big drop off to below average and almost reverses down to very weak levels there as we do progress towards mid-March. And there are quite a few, if we're being honest, that do go for the sudden stratospheric warming, the reversal of those zonal mean winds below that 0 mark. Again, not a massive amount, but still a significant number, a good 10 to 20% go for that scenario. So it'll be very interesting to see what does occur here, but definitely a pretty strong signal today that we are going to have a very strong polar vortex the next week or two, but into March things could get really quite interesting. Now, you may be wondering, when does the polar vortex normally reverse? That's normally mid-April, so we could see a reversal 4 or 5 weeks earlier than normal, and as I said, that could have knock-on impacts as we do progress into the early to middle parts of spring. Could allow further blocking patterns to occur, and typically when we see these late season warmings, they potentially deliver cold weather when 99% of people just want it to turn brighter, sunnier and warmer into March and April, where most people, including myself, get sick of the cold, dark conditions and want to just see some brightness, want to see some spring. But the weather decides that it will finally bring some proper cold. And we have seen that numerous times before, as I said, like in 2021, saw some really cold blasts through March and April. Not necessarily mean we're going to see something the same this year, but the possibility is open if we did see an early season warming here of the polar vortex and high up in the stratosphere. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see exactly how this does develop. This is something to take into account in the next couple of weeks, and perhaps we'll have another update maybe later next week. But yeah, at the moment, very strong, but pretty strong signal into the medium to longer term of a significant weakening, potentially, as I said. The risk of a minor warming looks quite moderate here, and there's a low risk of something a bit major. But yeah, things can change very quickly in these forecasts, so we'll just have to wait and see. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.